And good afternoon, everyone. This is the Lindsey Beckham Show. And of course, I'm not Lindsey Beckham. I'm Sean Yurtron. I'm stepping in for Lindsey today. She unfortunately has been stricken with the flu twice. She's been the unfortunate victim of the flu on two occasions in the last few weeks. We were in Montana a few weeks ago and she got it, and then came back here and now she's got it again. I got it last week, and I'll tell you what, y'all, I'm one of those people that I guess like typical men, I don't go to the doctor. I hate it. I think I know it's stupid, but I think it's like a stupid man thing to do. So I never go. And then Friday, I finally was like, something ain't right. I don't know if I'm going to die or what's going to go on here. So I went to the urgent care and found out that I had the flu and slight pneumonia and all that kind of stuff. So I was glad that I went. And so I had a lot of time to read into this. And apparently, we're having this crazy flu outbreak around the whole country. It's like a super flu that is resistant to the vaccine that everybody's getting, the flu vaccine, and that vaccine will give you maybe some protection, which to me kind of indicates means none, but that's what they're saying on TV at least. But anyway, just watch out. You're going to go home for family gatherings the next couple of days for Christmas, and you got older relatives and whatnot. It's might be a disaster from what I'm hearing, and just talking to friends of mine and family members. Everybody seems to have got this flu this season. So just be careful with your loved ones this Christmas. And I hope you all enjoy your Christmas as well. I think tomorrow we'll be playing Christmas music on the 24th and the 25th and maybe the 26th. I'm not sure if I have that right. But anyway, I'm here today and I'm going to talk about a few things. One, I don't know if you caught the NFL football game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Detroit Lions on Sunday. It involved a altercation with a wide receiver that we all know very well here in Mississippi named DK Metcalf, who played at Ole Miss, and a fan. And he had gotten an altercation with a fan, and that became pretty widely publicized. And I'm going to get into some of the legal ramifications of that and what the possible issues are for the Steelers, the Lions, and for Mr. Metcalf as well. Then our very own Jerry Mitchell of Mississippi Today and many, many other famous Mississippi stories has written a new article about the Goon Squad, the Rankin County Goon Squad that we've been covering here on WYAB for the last nearly 3 years, which profiles the relationship between Sheriff Bryan Bailey and Goon Squad member Christian Dedmon. Now, I don't know if y'all remember, but Christian Dedmon is also the cousin, I believe his cousin of Daryl Dedmon, who was sentenced for the murder of James Craig Anderson back around 2012. I remember I was part of that prosecution team. I was not the main prosecutor who handled that case. Is named Scott Rahilio, who did a great job on that back when we were all at the Hinds County District Attorney's Office. And Mr. Dedmon had, if anybody remembers, ran over Mr. Anderson with a pickup truck in South Jackson. So there's a new article profiling that, and we're going to get into all of that. But first, I want to go talk to y'all about the DK Metcalf situation. So what happened was during Sunday's game between the Steelers and the Lions, DK Metcalf got into a verbal exchange, if that's what you want to call it, with a fan seated near the sideline. And it got kind of heated. I think the fan looked like he was wearing some sort of wig or whatnot. And the video shows Metcalf kind of stepping towards the fan and making contact with him. You can't really tell if it's a punch or slap or what it is, and you can't hear what the fan is saying to DK there. But I think now DK is saying that the fan said some racial slurs to him. The fan saying that's not what happened, that he was referring to DK by his government name is the way he termed it, like DeKalin or something. That's what the fan said. Like the fan, but basically the fan was heckling him, right? A lot of fans are jerks and they tend to do that. And it seemed to piss DK off. Well, apparently this was not the first time this specific fan had messed with DK. So DK, before he was a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, was a member of the Seattle Seahawks last year. And they'd come to Ford Field to play a game. And this same fan, who must be a psychopath or whatnot, decided to stalk old DK down. And I don't know what he called him then. I think the references may have been to his mother, at least that's what's according to him. And Chad Ochocinco also confirmed that as well. So he's had some history with this guy. And this guy's obviously pissed him off. So he went up in the stand and he smacked him, punched him or something. But you can see the video. It's all over the internet now. The NFL I believe, has now suspended DK for I think it's either 2 games or maybe even the rest of the season. There's conflicting reports upon that, but he's gonna forfeit a lot of salary and possibly a bonuses into that. Now, the argument here is, and that DK I think is trying to say is, was he in some sort of like imminent threat by this fan? And I think that's the crux of the whole thing. You just can't go and hit somebody because you're pissed off. That's just not the way it works. It's gotta, you can't claim self-defense because someone makes you mad. It's got to be some sort of imminent threat to you. And from looking at that video, I just don't, I don't see that there. But in reality, looking at it, it pisses you off because you wonder, like, how far are we allowed to are people allowed to go with this these days? And I think online culture has kind of created that environment. And you notice, like, I'm sure everybody gets into Facebook debates with, their friends or people they don't really know that well. And it gets heated online. It gets really, really heated, and people say things to people online that they would never say face to face. And that's just kind of what the online social media culture has created. That's just kind of anger. And the more angry you get and the more heated you get, the more it boosts algorithms and everybody pays attention to it. And you feel like you can say what you want because there's no consequences. We've lost the ability to understand what it's like to be smacked in the mouth. And I think, I think that's unfortunate because it's reduced our civility. And now that translates to the real world. And you see that in a lot of examples, like this one with this fan who's been stalking DK down. So when you look at the video, you're like, oh my God, DK, he's why is he hitting a fan? And I think that's what I thought when I first saw it. But then when I look at the backstory, I'm like, this jerk is sitting there 2 games a year apart, is stalking this guy down and saying all these things, and for no reason whatsoever, just to mess with him. And he got hit. So I mean, I can't say that he didn't deserve it. Like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, kind of got what he deserved. Does that make it legal? No, it doesn't. I mean, DK could technically be charged with simple assault in Detroit. I think what he's going to be is face a lawsuit from the fan. I think that's coming for sure, because I think the next day, which was the least shocking news ever, is the fan had a lawyer, like, as a spokesman already. Obviously, the fan was not injured. I don't think it was even kind of a hit where he could have been. At the most, there's a bruise, but he's going to claim something like negligent infliction of emotional or intentional infliction of emotional stress or whatever bull crap that he's going to throw in there that happened. And he's going to file a lawsuit. He'll probably file a lawsuit against the Detroit Lions, the stadium, saying, negligent training and security or something to that regard, saying that they should have been able to protect him. Even though the fan is obviously, if you look at the video, he's kind of going over the railing there and yelling at DK and whatnot and provoking the entire situation. But he'll end up with money, and DK will end up definitely paying something, and definitely he's gonna forfeit some of his salary. But I thought about something when I watched it, though, that it was interesting in terms of what the NFL's response was going to be. And now that we see that they've suspended him for a few games, and I'm not quite sure exactly how many, I think it's 2. But if you're at your own job and let's say a customer comes in and they're arguing with you, and they keep on arguing with you, and they're rude, and then they cuss you out, or they make fun of your mother or your wife or your husband or whoever, they say something, and you smack them in the mouth, you're probably going to get fired. I mean, I would think that your employer is probably going to say, hey, look, man, we can't have you hitting a customer coming in here. But the NFL is different. Here, they suspend you for that, which I know that's all part of collective bargaining agreements, and that's what they have worked out for incidents of discipline and whatnot. But it's interesting to me that there's in like the regular world, there's a standard here where if you hit somebody that's a customer, you're gone. But the NFL, it's okay. And the NFL is kind of, for all the virtue signaling that the NFL does, they have a way of reducing that when it comes to the players. And what I mean by that is, like, I think years ago it was Dante Stallworth ran over a guy when he was drunk, and I think he paid a fine. I believe that's what it was, like about 20 years ago. I said a few years ago. The older you get, 20 years ago feels like a few years ago. And there's just been several instances of domestic violence, drugs, and stuff, and these guys get, small suspensions for that, where the rest of us would be either go to jail or, or get fired. But I thought that was kind of an interesting thought about what the punishment would be. Because I mean, if DK was just going crazy and decided to punch a fan, I kind of think he should get kicked out of the NFL if that's the case. Now, once I read the backstory about this fan provoking him, I felt differently about it. I said, well, the guy kind of got what he deserved, but that looks to be exactly what which what they're going to give him is just a suspension and whatnot. But I think this again breaks down to just a just a breakdown in our civility in society. And that's a problem that has been festered by social media to allow this. And not to say that fans have not been heckling players for generations. Of course, they all are. We've seen movies depicting what Jackie Robinson went through. Of course, that was a different, situation. And, or Babe Ruth hitting, missing having striking out, and then the fans are throwing hot dogs at him in the 1920s or whatever. I mean, so it's nothing new to sports that kind of stuff happens. But here it seems it's become much more vile than it always has been. It's really, really vile with this fan, deliberately following DK around after after a year and still attacking him. And I think that's just a product of our online space, unfortunately, and the way that we treat each other, and the way that we have like just no respect for somebody else on the internet. And that I think that's also translating now into our social circles too, where if someone has a different opinion than you, you're automatically attacking them, or you hate them, or you think that they're lesser than you, or they're evil somehow, they're trying to destroy you. And it's just I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I think about it, I'm like, does social media really serve any purpose in our society except for, you know, I don't know, keeping up with friends' birthdays? I'm not sure. It's made people a lot more angry. I've always had a suggestion for this. I think if we brought back dueling, that may curb some of the online anger. Because back in the day, in 1800s, if someone said something nasty about you, what you could do is you could say, "Well, I'm going to challenge you to a duel." Now, that didn't always mean that you were going to pull out guns and shoot each other. It was kind of like a threat, and then the person would have to apologize or go through with the duel. Well, most duels ended up in an apology because most guys were like, "Yeah, I don't want to shoot up for this." And I'm not saying we should bring back dueling and we should threaten people to gunfights, but I think there needs to be some sort of consequences where you know that you cannot just treat your neighbor disrespectfully and say things like, negatively about his wife or him or whatever, and expect to just get away with it. There's got to be we've got to step up and just make people accountable to this. I don't know, maybe that's gonna require some butt kicking. Yeah, I'm okay with that. But kidding, but there needs to be something, because then you're gonna see incidents like this happen over and over again, and all you're gonna have is more lawsuits. Really, is what's gonna happen here. Even though in this situation, the fan's the one who really created the drama. DK just, unfortunately, snapped off at the, just snapped on the situation and ended up hitting him for his sake. But I think that's something that we need to, seriously think about, and think about when you're online and you're talking to somebody. Maybe, don't call them an a-hole. Just say, okay, I disagree with you. I know that's not going to happen, but that's what festers into situations like this, it does seem. We're going to pick up with this on the next segment here of the Lindsey Beckham Show. And we're also going to get to the Goon Squad, which is and the meat of that stuff. There's some great revelations that Jerry Mitchell has come out in that article that talks about Bryan Bailey's close relationship with Christian Dedmon, including Dedmon being the executor of the sheriff's will, which I thought was pretty fascinating. That the sheriff would make Christian Dedmon the executor of his will, according to Dedmon, and that's what's in the article. But we'll be right back on the Lindsey Beckham Show. Y'all stay tuned. And we're back on the Lindsey Beckham Show here in the Men's Health and Women's Wellness Studio in lovely Flora, Mississippi. This is not Lindsey Beckham. This is Sean Yurtron. For those of you waiting to hear about vaccines, I will not be talking about that today. That you'll have to wait for Lindsey for next week. I'm going to talk about law and sports and the Goon Squad, which are, I guess, subjects I know a lot better about. We were talking about the DK Metcalf altercation situation over the course of last weekend, and I did want to compare it to a situation that happened with Lamar Jackson, who's the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. He was in he played the Buffalo Bills earlier this year, where a fan slapped him across the helmet, and he pushed him back. Now, what the NFL did in response to that was they banned that fan from the stadiums for life. And that was because the fan actually hit Lamar first. So they said, okay, Lamar, you acted in self-defense, which was different than what happened this last weekend with DK Metcalf. The only thing, though, that I do think, and I mentioned this in the last segment, was this wacko fan who had kind of stalked DK down last season when he was with the Seattle. He was a completely different team, the Seattle Seahawks. So we know this is DK specific. It's not just he hates all Pittsburgh Steelers players. He's picking DK out, and he stalked him down and started talking nasty to him. And then this year he's back in Detroit, does the same thing. I wonder at the moment, does that create reasonable fear, like a single white female situation or Fatal Attraction or whatever kind of, movie thing that I'm talking about, where DK is like, maybe I need to hit this guy before he comes after me because he's obviously crazy. He's obviously a weirdo, and he's got some weird complex with me. And we know how a lot of there's crazy fans out there that have obsessions with celebrities that do things. So I don't think that would. I don't think that's going to help DK's civil or even potential criminal defense, but it is a possibility. And it may be something that he's going to think about throwing out there and was going through his mind. So, but generally it's not going to be available to him in the context of a self-defense claim, because you can clearly see in the video, he walks up there and punches a guy or smacks a guy first. And that's and then that's kind of the crux of it. The fan is up in the stand. So it's going to be hard to say that, like, hey, this is self-defense. DK was in imminent fear of death or bodily injury. He's just not going to be able to say that. And that's the standard. You gotta be a reasonable person would fear that you're in imminent fear of bodily harm or death. And it's just, it's not there in this situation. So DK is just going to lose some money, and he's going to from his salary, and he's going to pay some money. It seems to me what the situation is. But I think the NFL also needs to have a little better handle on their fans and how close they can actually get to these players in the stadium where something like this doesn't happen, because it doesn't seem like they should have been able to been in that close a proximity to do that, or to get into that kind of physical altercation. So I was talking to some people about this, and I got a question about somebody just asked me, what are fighting words? And I think people have heard that, like, what are fighting words? And I think there's a misconception that means if someone says something nasty to you, that you can hit them. And it's not what that means. But I think people think that. And fighting words just means they're words that don't have First Amendment protections. So, like, basically, like, you're threatened to go fisticuffs with somebody, you can get arrested for that. Then that's kind of some of the Supreme Court law has said that, where you don't have like a First Amendment protection on a fighting word, because those words can create violence or danger. And so you're just not protected there. And it's different than, like, if you were, and this is the example they use, burning the flag, which to me, if I see someone burning the flag, I'm going to want to fight them. That makes you think that that's a fighting word, because most of us see someone burning the flag and we're going to be kind of drawn to hit the person. And but the Supreme Court says that's not considered a fighting word. So that's a difference there. It's just where you're about to definitely direct it somewhere, you're going to draw them into a physical altercation, and then that's not protected in that context. So there's a difference between that. But here, I think the only thing you could have said it was more like offensive words, at least according to DK. The only thing I heard sort of on the video was him call him by his full name, DeKalin. So I don't know if that was, I don't think that should be offensive to him, but it definitely pissed him off where he went out and hit him. And I mean, I'm assuming that it, pissed him off that this is the same jerk off that keeps on following him around and stalking him down at 2 games, a year apart. So, but hold on, we got a caller on line one. Once. Hello. Hello. You on there?
Hey, Sean, it's Teddy. What's going on, man?
Hey, Teddy, what's up?
Not much. Man, I've been to a lot of Saints games in my life, and I mean, where do we draw the line on what fans are allowed to say? Because, I mean, if you go in there and you target one particular player, it's the human nature is going to get under your skin. Now, DK's got to have the self-discipline not to go over there and smack him. But I remember being years ago at a Saints-Steelers game, and this guy kept calling Plaxico Burress. He called him plexiglass a million times, and I didn't think it was cute. I didn't think it was funny, but it annoyed Plaxico Burress.
I bet.
And he didn't get as close to DK, but he walked within 10 or 12 feet and had some choice words for this fan. But, I guess NFL can't tell fans have a human decency rule or something, but the players are human. We can't expect them not to react.
Yeah.
But hitting somebody's a little much.
No, I think I was saying that in the first segment, like I think heckling has been historically part of all sports, right? I mean, you and I probably seen like old reels of baseball in the 1920s, Babe Ruth and all the kids are throwing hot dogs. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, heckling has been but I think now that it's just this level of vitriol that didn't exist in the past. There's a difference between calling somebody a bum and then, or saying his mom's a hoe. Like there's a big difference between that, I think.
Yeah, you're probably going to have to do another version of this show after Lane Kiffin comes to Oxford, because there's.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I'm sitting here saying that the fans ought to draw a line, and I'm thinking I won't have to draw a line when I'm at that game next year.
Yeah, I'm actually, Teddy, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking about that yesterday in relation to this. You remember when we were, and you're an big Ole Miss fan. I'm a big Ole Miss fan. And you remember where we were all watching the Tennessee game back in, I think, 2021, and everybody was throwing golf balls and mustard at him at Lane.
Oh yeah.
Everybody. I remember I don't know about your friend circle. My friend circle, everybody was texting like, "I can't believe these idiots are doing this. Well, how disrespectful." Blah 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 blah. Now I'm thinking, fast forward, all of us in September, we're like, okay, Teddy, can you fit enough mustard under your shirt? Like that's gonna be like all us, right? Now we get it.
So, as far as throwing things on the field, Sean, I was at a Saints game, and there's actually what happened changed the course of NFL history as far as fan experience. Mm-hmm. I was at a Saints game against the 49ers, and there was a terrible, I think it was a no-call penalty against the 49ers on the Saints. And beer bottles and everything got thrown late in the fourth quarter, got thrown on the field. After that game, I don't think they waited till next season. After that weekend, no, that's why if you go to NFL games, alcohol sales stops at the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's league wide. And so while I didn't throw anything, I was with some people that did, and some people down there got arrested, including some pretty important people with Ford, the car company Ford. And so I'll be able to control myself. I won't throw anything on the field. I do have that much human decency. And now I don't know what word will fly out of my mouth. I'm sure it's the one everybody knows.
Yeah, I'm not going to throw anything either, but I guess now I feel their pain. Like, and I think what Lane did to us was actually worse than what happened with Tennessee. So, like we got a way more, reason to be angry, but I don't, and I'm not encourage anybody to throw anything. I'm kidding, of course, but I do get the anger. Hey, before we got run out of time on the segment, what are your predictions? I got Sugar Bowl tickets. What are your predictions for the Sugar Bowl?
Man, well, my wife and I have never been to a game together where Ole Miss lost, so that means we're probably going to go.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we go, we'll win. I know that's a little superstitious, but it's one good thing for Ole Miss is when we played in Athens earlier this year and got beat, we're at Georgia. This crowd in the Superdome at Georgia, the best Georgia can hope for is 50-50. That's the absolute best. But also, Georgia fans expect to win, so I don't think they're going to buy as many tickets as this one as they will to the next round. So I think it's going to be 65-35 Ole Miss fans in there, which really is going to make a difference, I think. But also, it's certainly going to help. We're not going to have a noise factor where, for instance, Trinidad won't be able to hear and that kind of stuff. And I think that's going to help because, we did okay with it when we lost in Athens. The point spread is like 6.5 or 7. I'll take Ole Miss on those points, but just for being a homer, I've got to predict that Ole Miss wins. I don't know, 31-28. I hope.
So you're predicting Ole Miss win?
Yeah.
The only thing I'm concerned about, I mean, it's obviously we both know, big football fans, followers of football, that it's hard to beat somebody twice in a season. Now we just did it to Tulane, but that's I think a little different story because they're not very comparable teams in my mind. I think we all learned a big lesson last weekend with the committee allowing James Madison and Tulane into the playoffs. But that being said, it is hard to beat comparable teams to beat each other twice in the same year. But Georgia also looks better now than they did when they played us. In my opinion, they look like a better team.
Right. I know we got to go, but at no point should James Madison and Ohio State start the season shooting for the same national title.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I guess you can look at it this way, like Texas to me made a strong case to it, and obviously Notre Dame, but I'm going to give Texas kind of the up over Notre Dame, but I think they made a strong case to be in the playoffs. And can you imagine we had Texas in there, playing Oregon or whoever? That would have been, I mean, obviously that would have been a phenomenal game.
I mean, what if Arch had come to Oxford?
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, Texas. I didn't even. That's a great point, Teddy. That would have been just completely epic. They were actually talking about when I was watching the Ole Miss Tulane game that it would have been. They thought it would have been Notre Dame instead of Tulane if they put Notre Dame in.
Yeah.
And but still, man, can you imagine Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Oxford? That would have been. It'd have been even huger than it was last weekend.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The thing is, if Arch and Texas had got in and came to Oxford, I don't think Eli's on the field. I think he just stays up in the booth.
Yeah, that's right. It's all right. But hey, look, man, at least we're talking about this, and we got our exciting football season, and hopefully next week things will go our way. Like that's all we can pray for, and we can shove it up Lane's butt. I mean,
that's all we can hope for. Hey, I do got to ask this though.
Yeah.
Make the LSU people mad. I find it ironic that Knox went to public school in Oxford, but he's going to a private school in Baton Rouge. Is it really that much of a better place?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think that's a good one. I gotta leave you on that note, Teddy. I appreciate it, but that's a good one.
All right, man.
We'll catch you all on the next segment of the Lindsey Beckham Show when we're talking about the Goon Squad. Be right back. And we're back on the Lindsey Beckham Show. And again, I'm not Lindsey Beckham. I'm Sean Yurtkron. And I've been here talking about the DK Metcalf situation for far, far too long. And I apologize for that. I'm sure everybody's sick of that stuff. But it's football season and it's fun to talk about. Thanks for Teddy calling in. We got to discuss Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and all that kind of stuff that people are probably getting sick of as well. But I've got some real news for you that actually matters here. And this is regarding the Rankin County Goon Squad story that we've been covering on this station for nearly 3 years, and that Jerry Mitchell from This Be Today has been covering as well. Well, he's the one really, really covering it. We're just kind of like reading the stuff that he writes. So, in all fairness, and he's been doing a great job over there. We've been lucky enough to have him on, I think, about a year or so ago, and some of the reporters that are working in conjunction with him that I think are barred from the New York Times. And those guys have been doing great work uncovering new revelations day by day. I don't know if y'all recall, but a few weeks ago, there was a story about a man that they'd used a shock vest on in the Rankin County Jail. And there's a video of this. And this man, and now I forget his name, though I'll remember it shortly. And it was just this, I hate to use the word, I was about to use the word shocking, but I guess that's the best way to describe it. Video, this man in this vest, and they're kind of doing it for sport. It's the way it appears, and it's a horrific thing to see. And I remember actually when I first saw it was in the New York Times, and I'm thinking, God bless, like, what does the rest of the nation think when they open that and they say, wow, that's Mississippi, or they're shocking a black man in this vest. And it's unfathomable. But more stuff keeps coming out. It seems like it's an endless stream of unethical stuff out of this these stories that Jerry's uncovering drip by drip by drip, and he just doesn't seem to be going away. I'm sure Sheriff Bailey, if Sheriff Bailey had herpes, he'd call it Jerry at this point, because Jerry just doesn't go away. Anyway, so the article today is about the relationship between Christian Dedmon and Sheriff Bailey. And it's actually also a profile of Christian Dedmon. Now, if you remember, he's one of the primary Goon Squad actors, where I believe he received 40 years in federal prison for his actions. Some of it was pretty disgusting. Like, he was like rubbing his junk on people and just doing a lot of sexual stuff. And I don't know, kind of weird guy, obviously. And so this article profiles that, where it says that they're interviewing Dedmon. He says that Sheriff Bailey was kind of like a father figure to him that he never had. And then that Sheriff Bailey kind of served that role to him. And I mean, that's not a bad thing if you don't end up in the Goon Squad. That seems to be a fine thing. But if you end up in the Goon Squad, I guess it's not a good thing. Then also it discusses how Christian Dedmon was the executor of the sheriff's will. So, if someone is going to be the executor of your will, you're obviously, like, I'm the executor of my dad's will. We're obviously very close. He's my father. So you're a pretty close person to that person. And I would think, it just, the implication is that they would know what you're doing. And what I mean by that is Christian Dedmon's a member of the Goon Squad. It seems to me that possible that Sheriff Bailey may have known what he was up to, him and the rest of the guys, including his chief deputy, Brett McAlpin. It has other interesting points in there, I thought, that I read, where after the raid that this whole thing's about, the ones on Parker and Jenkins and Braxton, where one of them was shot through the mouth, that Sheriff Bailey's reaction was that he was mad that it happened shortly before the qualifying deadline for the next election, because that could cause him some problems. Well, I mean, politics does matter. I mean, I know a lot of politicians, I guess, would be like, dang it, why did this have to happen now? Couldn't it happen after the qualifying deadline? But that seemed to be his concern, according to Dedmon here. And so I was reading this, I was thinking about all the articles and all the information that Jerry has come up with, and the stuff that I've heard, that Clay's heard, that, a couple of years ago almost now is when I think Clay and I reported pretty extensively on this stuff. And I just, and when I was a prosecutor for a really long time, and now I do criminal defense. So I'm pretty experienced about putting cases together, and just, it's like a puzzle when you put together a criminal prosecution, and piece by piece by piece, and you put it together. And I was thinking, all the stuff that has come out where back, I think it was 2014, when Sheriff Bailey used the grand jury to subpoena his girlfriend, Christy Shanks, I think now wife, phone records, as well as like a high school principal or middle school principal in Brandon, and Fred Shanks, Representative Fred Shanks, records by using the grand jury. Now, I've used the grand jury or been in the grand jury many, many times over my career, and that is not an accepted practice to do. You can't use the grand jury because you want to spy on your girlfriend. You can hire a private investigator or be like the rest of us and stalk them on Facebook. Kidding, but I mean, you have to do something like that. You can't use the grand jury. That's not appropriate stuff there. And then you see the reporting about the use of inmates at his family's chicken farms, and you see the man with the shock vest, the Goon Squad, and you just start putting, you're like, God bless. Like, oh, and then there was, excuse me, Stephen Frederick, who allegedly Sheriff Bailey helped him get out of a DUI that he had. I think it was in Scott County, according to the reporting in the Mississippi Today. And so you got, like, he's using the grand jury, he's helping people get out of DUIs, he's got inmates working on the farm. And then there's this Goon Squad that he just doesn't know anything about. I mean, and I guess what I'm trying to say, y'all, is whenever I had a case, where there was a lot of evidence against someone, and their defense would be like, oh, well, no, I mean, that witness is lying. They didn't see me, or that piece of evidence is fabricated. My closing argument would always be, I'd call them like the man of a thousand coincidences. Because I'd just be like, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, what a coincidence this guy doesn't know him, identifies him as the shooter. Oh, it's another coincidence that his DNA is on that hat that's seen on the video in the robbery. I mean, like I said, he is basically the unluckiest man in the world, that this defendant, because there's all this evidence against him and he's innocent. And so that's kind of when you look at this stuff through that lens, it's just, there's a lot of stuff that adds up to one place, I think. And I mean, the conclusion that would be that Sheriff Bailey, and of course I don't know that he knew about the actions of the Goon Squad, just based upon past conduct with using the grand jury in a way that you're not supposed to, that everybody knows you're not supposed to, using county inmates to work on your own farm, trying to help people get out of a DUI, and the list seems to go on and on and on. And I just, I mean, I think you'd have to be, I'm trying to put this nicely, I think a fourth grader could put this one together. That's what I'm saying. And I don't think there's any way to look at it. It just doesn't make any sense to me, in my opinion, that he didn't know what was going on with these guys, considering all the stuff that is happening. And even like I said, the latest thing with the guy in the shock vest. I mean, there's literally a man in a vest that they're shocking for fun. Like, so it just seems like there's a pattern of this there. And the implication to me seems quite obvious that, he must have known that. Of course, I don't have any knowledge of that. I think that shock vest video, though, definitely has renewed a lot of interest in this case when I'm hearing around the legal communities, that there's, there'll be a possible federal prosecution here coming in 2026. There's scuttlebutt out there to that effect. I don't know if any of that's true or not, but I think that video kind of, it shocked a lot of people's consciences around here that you don't want to shock, from what I'm hearing. And so we'll see where that leads to. But I do encourage everybody to go out there and read this article, read about Sheriff Bailey's close relationship with Christian Dedmon, read about how Dedmon was the executor of his will, read about all of that stuff. And go back and look at the articles that have been written by Jerry and his gang of reporters out there, and just piece it together for yourself. Like, tell you what do you think about, like, if a sheriff is using the grand jury to spy on their girlfriend, or if they're trying to get their friend out of a DUI, or if they're using inmates to fix up their chicken farm, or if they're putting people in a shock vest, or their employees are. I mean, what do you think about that kind of thing? If that's okay with you, it's on you. But I think if you look at it objectively, there's about only one place you can possibly go with that. And I think you know what place that is. Well, anyway, we'll be back on the next segment of the Lindsey Beckham Show, and I will not be wearing a shock vest. Be right back. And we're back here for the last very short segment of the Lindsey Beckham Show, where, again, I'm not Lindsey Beckham. I'm Sean Yurtcron. If you've not turned the radio off by now and got bored with listening to football players attacking folks and more Goon Squad stuff, which we'll always have more Goon Squad stuff here because apparently Jerry Mitchell doesn't sleep and continues to write article after article. And I'm kidding. We really appreciate him for doing that time and again. But hopefully I'll probably back here next week with Lindsey to talk about whatever tends to happen in that week between Christmas and New Year's that doesn't seem to count and you don't know what day it is. And we'll be back to discuss whatever the news is during that time. Also, I hope everybody has a good Christmas. And look, I lost my mother during Thanksgiving, and I just want to say, hold your loved ones tight this Christmas. Remember, I know sometimes it gets frustrating to spend time with family, but hold on to it. It really doesn't matter. See y'all. Merry Christmas.